Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. My name is Nick.
I'm Ian.
And today we're going to be talking about some of our favorite progressive rock albums of the 70s. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you go check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den merch page. There's also a link for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, the Spotify and Apple Music weekly playlist that we put together, and also the Patreon page. So make sure you go check all that out. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give us the old thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time we release new episodes. So Ian is definitely a much bigger progressive rock fan than I am. So this is definitely much more his episode than it is mine. But I'm definitely a fan of some of the albums that we're going to talk about. But I'm going to let Ian start this one off.
So with progressive rock, it's kind of a broad spectrum, obviously. And it really kind of is more focused on the 70s. But there's still progressive rock being made today. But the 70s is kind of like the bread and butter of progressive rock music.
Yeah. It's kind of like the heyday of progressive rock.
Some people argue that it really kind of started in the 60s, but for me, personally, my opinion is it doesn't really come into its own until 71, 72.
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
Yeah, and, so we picked a few albums. Obviously, I could pick, tons and tons of records, but
I probably couldn't. But
well, I told you going into this, I had like 10 just off the top of my head, and you're like, let's do 5.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start out with one that is kind of a big one in the world. Brain Salad Surgery by Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Yeah.
Emerson, Lake and Palmer are kind of like the
I'm going to take it out of the sleeve.
When it comes to pomp and circumstance of rock and roll, they had that, but they took it into the progressive area with their stage shows. They had a 15 rig caravan to carry their equipment. They had one truck just for the rugs to put down on the stage for themselves.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so I mean they took lavishness to a whole new level, but and it does show in some of their records. Brain Salad Surgery is probably one of their more popular albums.
It's my favorite of their albums.
Yeah,
for sure.
The album cover is very well known, as it was done by H.R. Giger. Not much can be said about it. Carnival number 9. It's broken up into parts, but as a whole, I think it's one of the top 5 or 10 greatest epic progressive rock pieces ever.
It is a really good album. So you guys know I'm a big Pink Floyd fan.
No.
So you guys know, I'm going to talk about Pink Floyd, but you probably wouldn't guess this album that I'm going to pick. I would say Wish You Were Here is definitely my favorite progressive rock album. I know some people, we were talking before we started recording, a lot of people kind of think Dark Side of the Moon is a much more progressive rock album. I don't really consider Dark Side of the Moon
I think it's just because it's one of their most popular album is why it kind of gets put at the top of that list. Because we were discussing, there's arguable reasons why one is more progressive than the other. Yeah. But Dark Side of the Moon is always going to be kind of on the top of most lists.
And if you look online, they're definitely up there on lists. Wish You Were Here, I think, was their first true progressive rock album. And I would say I think Pink Floyd really only has, I would say 3 for sure progressive rock albums. Wish You Were Here, Animals, Atom Heart Mother are their big 3. I wouldn't put Dark Side of the Moon on there. A lot of their other stuff, some of their early stuff, I would say is definitely more psychedelic. Even though, like you mentioned before we started recording, some people kind of consider Piper That Gets It Done a little more progressive.
They kind of see it. Some people actually consider it one of the first progressive rock albums.
Yeah, I definitely consider that more psychedelic. But Wish You Were Here, the entire album is just a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. And
it's got their longest epic song too, isn't it? "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" like 30 minutes.
Well, no, Echoes is their longest song. "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" is actually 2 different parts.
Still. So for my next one, I didn't bring my copy of it. I actually didn't know we were doing this topic until I was already on my way.
I changed topics.
You did. This is a good topic, so that's okay. But one of my top progressive albums is "Fragile" by Yes.
Which I've never actually even listened to the album.
Oh, you've heard several songs off of it.
Have I?
Yeah, Roundabout's on there. That was a big radio song. Yes is, again, kind of up there with Emerson, Lake and Palmer as far as their, maybe not so much on their personas, but as far as their music goes, very progressive, very pompous and overblown in many ways, but well done. That's why I like them. But But Fragile, some people would say Close to the Edge is their biggest progressive album. I think I just personally like Fragile a lot better. But I still, Close to the Edge is a great album too.
Yeah.
But Fragile is my favorite one, and that's on my list for progressive rock albums.
For progressive albums, I could have went in a couple of different avenues with this next one. I just decided to go Left Overture by Kansas. It's a fantastic album. It's really kind of close between this and Point of No Return.
Me personally, I kind of go Point of No Return, but I can see the argument for either one.
I think Left Overture is an album that I grew up listening to this album.
Right.
So that's probably why I kind of lean a little more towards this album, even though both of them are fantastic albums. I've got copies of both of them. But I think it's my dad, I'm sure, had this album because I inherited his record collection when I was like, I don't know, 13, 14 years old. So I used to listen to this one all the time.
Little point of trivia, it was your copy. I'd heard Carry On Wayward Son millions of times, but I never heard any of the other songs off of it. It was at your house and your copy that I listened to that album all the way through for the first time ever. Yep.
The on record?
Yep. Yeah, because you had it on vinyl and we played it. And that was the first time I ever heard a full Kansas album.
Really?
Probably the time that's what made me a fan of them.
Yeah.
Right? So for my last one, it's obviously going to be Thick as a Brick by Jethro Tull. Jethro Tull is my favorite band. And if I even breaking down progressive rock albums, this is probably my favorite progressive rock album.
I would have to fully agree with that.
And it does, I have seen some lists online and other YouTube videos and stuff where Thick as a Brick is listed as number one for other people too.
The funny thing was, I've seen a lot of, like I looked up some progressive rock lists before we started recording. Mm-hmm. A lot of them didn't even have this on there, which I thought was
it goes back and forth, but I have seen a couple where this was their number one as well.
I will say that the ones that didn't have Thick as a Brick listed on there had Aqualung listed on there.
Okay, yeah. So, it was technically their first foray into progressive, but with Thick as a Brick, the funny thing about it is it kind of started out as a parody of progressive rock, that Emerson, Lake and Palmer overblown thing, and ironically became, by some standards, to be one of the best progressive rock albums of the 70s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you have not heard this album, please go out and listen to it.
I was actually listening to this earlier today.
Yep. I listened to it the other day. I probably listen to it about at least once a month, probably more like twice a month.
Yeah.
Just randomly, just throw it on, even if I'm in my car, it's on sometimes. I always have to throw the vinyl on at least once a month. So.
Yeah. Well, that's all we got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Like I said, we could have went a bunch of different directions with this, so make sure you drop us a comment down below. Let us know what some of your favorite progressive rock albums of the 70s are. We could have done at least 10 or 15 of these. It's
and I mean, even going into the 90s and even the 2000s, I mean, there's several even newer bands that are coming out that no one's probably even heard of that are, because they're progressive and they're really,
So let us know what you guys think. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give us the old thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. And that's all we got. Until next time.
Talk to y'all later.
Keep on spinning. Peace.